The birthday cake had just been placed on the dining table when my younger sister suddenly laughed and held up a small white envelope. "Come on, Daniel," she teased. "Open your DNA results already." Everyone smiled except my mother. She froze. Her coffee cup slipped slightly in her hands, spilling a few drops onto the tablecloth. At first, I thought she was simply nervous because these ancestry tests often reveal distant relatives or funny family stories. I smiled, opened the envelope, and began reading. Then my entire world stopped. The report clearly stated that the man who had raised me for 34 years was not my biological father. The room fell completely silent. My father looked confused. My sister stopped smiling. My mother slowly lowered her eyes. Nobody said a word. Finally, my father whispered, "There has to be some mistake." I looked at my mother. She didn't deny it. Instead, she quietly started crying. My name is Daniel Carter, and that birthday gift uncovered the biggest lie my family had ever hidden. Growing up, I always felt different from my younger sisters. I had dark hair while everyone else was blonde. I was nearly 6 feet 4 inches tall, while every other man in my family barely reached 6 feet. Relatives often joked that I looked like the mailman, and everyone laughed. I laughed too. I never imagined the joke would one day become terrifyingly close to the truth. My father, Robert, never treated me differently. He taught me how to ride a bicycle, coached my baseball team, stayed awake helping with school projects, and stood beside me every time life became difficult. In every way that mattered, he was my father. That's why reading those DNA results felt impossible. After everyone left that evening, Mom finally admitted the truth. 35 years earlier, before marrying Dad, she had briefly dated another man named Michael. When the relationship ended, she discovered she was pregnant. Afraid of raising a child alone, she never told Michael. A few months later she met Robert, who fell in love with both her and the baby she was carrying. She wanted to tell him everything. Every single time she tried, fear stopped her. Then the years passed. One lie became a lifetime of silence. Dad sat quietly listening to every word. When Mom finished, he simply stood up and walked outside without saying anything. Watching him leave hurt more than discovering the truth itself. For the next several weeks, our family barely spoke. Dad moved into the guest room. Mom cried almost every night. My sisters blamed the DNA company for destroying our family. I blamed nobody. I simply wanted answers. Eventually I decided to search for Michael, the man whose name appeared on an old photograph Mom had kept hidden inside a wooden jewelry box. After weeks of searching public records, I finally found him living nearly 500 miles away in a quiet coastal town. I drove there alone without telling anyone. My hands shook as I knocked on his front door. A gray-haired man opened it, smiled politely, and asked if he could help me. Before I could even speak, he stared into my face. His expression changed instantly. "My God," he whispered. "You have my father's eyes." We sat together for nearly 4 hours. Michael admitted he had always wondered whether Mom had been pregnant when they separated. He never married. He never had other children. Every birthday, he secretly thought about the child he might never meet. When I finally showed him the DNA results, tears filled his eyes. "I missed your entire life," he whispered. I reached across the table and took his hand. "None of this was your choice." That single sentence broke both of us. Over the following months, we slowly built a relationship neither of us expected to have. But back home, everything else was falling apart. Dad filed for divorce. My mother begged him to reconsider. Relatives chose sides. Some blamed Mom. Others blamed the past. Christmas arrived with nobody willing to celebrate together. Then, just before New Year's Eve, Dad called me. His voice sounded tired. "Can you come over?" he asked. When I arrived, he handed me a dusty cardboard box filled with old photographs, school drawings, birthday cards, and Father's Day gifts I had made as a child. "Do you remember giving me these?" he asked. I nodded. He smiled sadly. "Every one of them says, 'To the world's best dad.'" He paused for a long moment before continuing. "Daniel, biology didn't write those cards." Tears blurred my vision. Dad looked directly at me. "DNA can tell you who helped create you." He gently placed his hand on my shoulder. "It can never change who chose to raise you." I couldn't hold back anymore. We hugged for what felt like an eternity. A few weeks later, Dad surprised everyone by withdrawing the divorce petition. He admitted he still felt betrayed, but 40 years of marriage deserved honesty more than anger. Mom spent months rebuilding the trust she had broken decades earlier. It wasn't easy. Some wounds never disappear completely. But little by little, our family learned how to move forward instead of living inside the past. The greatest surprise came several months later when Michael and Dad met for the first time. I expected tension. Instead, Michael walked across the room, shook Dad's hand firmly, and quietly said, "Thank you for giving my son the life I couldn't." Dad smiled gently. "He's our son now." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Today, people often ask whether I feel like I have two fathers. I always give the same answer. I was lucky enough to have two good men love me in different ways. One gave me life. The other gave me everything that made life worth living. Sometimes the truth destroys the story you've believed your entire life. But every now and then, it gives you a bigger family than you ever imagined. Every year on my birthday, I no longer think about the envelope that changed everything. I think about the two men standing beside me when I blow out the candles. One shares my blood. The other shares my heart. And if life has taught me anything, it's this: blood may begin a family, but love is what keeps it together.